Ready? All right, good evening. This is the Services Committee meeting for November 1st, 2023. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Capel?
Here.
Mayor St. John?
Here.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper? Four yeas.
It's all right.
We have four.
It's been a month. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of our October 4th meeting. Can I get a second? Was anybody else here? Okay. Second by Mr. Neff. Roll call, please.
Mr. Capel?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper? Yes. Mayor St. John?
Yes.
Four yeas.
All right. No visitors on the schedule for this evening, so we'll get right into the fun stuff with the new and unfinished business in the 2024 street program. Spent a lot of time on that this month.
Yes, we have.
Yes, we have.
So go ahead. Yes.
We've got a short presentation together. While she's doing that, I introduced Manuel Allman. He's the guy that did all the work. I'm just telling you about it. He's spent a lot of time putting this together. I'm very happy to have him on board. He's recently joined us about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Came over from MS Consultants and hit the ground running. And he's been a key part of this program.
Nice to meet you in person.
So maybe just for the benefit of the other two members of the services committee. So as the chairman said, we have met a couple of times since our last meeting, since our last full committee meeting to talk about the streets program. So what you will see here is what we're recommending as the 2024 program. So with that, yeah.
Thank you. And so what we've boiled it down to, go ahead, Amber. I'll talk about our PACER ratings, the mill and fill portions of what we intend to do in 2024. Some crack sealing, which will be independent of the streets program, but I thought it was important to show some safety improvements and some drainage improvements, and then I'll answer questions. And I'll go through this relatively quickly. I won't belabor the point, but you can ask questions during or after, however you prefer. Go ahead. This is the, I know you can't read that very well, but this is the PACER ratings for the roads that we were most concerned about in this year's program. As I mentioned before, we'll, when I say we, I mean he will go through and rate roads throughout the community, ultimately get every road and try to get them probably every other year. I think that word is biannually, get them every other year so that we can have a good solid history of the ratings and see how they progress or deteriorate as the case may be. And so this, you can see the ones that are highlighted are the ones that we are going to do some work on. And you can see that the ratings are all either in the 3, 4, or 5 category. We didn't go up into the 6, which is a relatively good condition. And the magnitude of the project we're doing in 2024, those didn't quite make the cut. Go ahead. So this is what did make the cut. I know they're hard to see on the map, but there's a visual representation of the locations. The roads that we'll be working on are on the left-hand column there. Some of them are partial, like Fayboro. It just goes on a part of that road because the remainder of the road didn't necessitate any work. Same with Sedgwick. Vernon Street, that's a perfect example of a road that varies from poor condition to relatively good condition in a short period of time. So South Vernon is not being taken care of. No, there's no work being done on that, but South Vernon is in poor shape. Plus we have other reasons to do that project. This is what we've come to with the budget, and so what we would take care of this year. Obviously the primary route there is North Miller Road, which would we say the ADT on that is close to 4,000 average daily traffic for North Miller, so a pretty heavily traveled road. Okay, and then as these other roads that are shown in green were ones that didn't quite rise to the level of needing a full mill and fill treatment, but we do see a lot of cracking on those roads. And as I mentioned previously, implementing a pavement preservation approach in this community will help us to better allocate our resources in this year and in the future. So the reason to do the crack sealing is to extend the life a little bit longer. We may have to crack seal them every other year, or ultimately they'll get to the point where we'll have to go through and mill and fill. But there's a good bit of roads there that we'll be hitting with the crack seal machine next year.
Yeah, so before we leave this slide, we do anticipate this will be done by internal staff. Remember, we did purchase a crack sealing machine, I think it was last year. So the other thing that I just want to mention here is that as we discussed, one thing you don't see in the plan this year is a Cape seal. And based upon the conversation that Dan and I had with some consultants in the space of road maintenance, one of the things they'd indicated is that if you're going to Cape seal, you ought to crack seal before that. So these might be future, maybe prospects for that kind of treatment. So, you know, it's important to take care of at least the crack sealing now. So that does kind of set the stage for some other treatment, maybe later on, if we decide we want to do that.
Thank you. Great points. You don't have to go back, but you would have seen the middle view is on crack seal. We would have done a mill and fill on that, but given that we'll be expanding the wastewater plant, there'll be a lot of heavy truck traffic and there's no sense in paving it in, then putting it under severe pressure for a period of time. So we'll do some crack sealing there. And once the wastewater plant's done, we can schedule it for a mill and fill type approach.
Quick question on the Cape seal. Were we at all informed before we did the Cape sealing this last time that it was advised to do the crack sealing first? Or is that just something we're finding out?
Yeah, I wasn't involved as much in the planning work last year. Do you remember?
I don't remember. I don't recall. And I don't think we did crack seal.
We did not.
No.
Yeah, we didn't.
Better late than never, I suppose. That's good to know for future planning. Yeah.
So in addition to the paving, the mill and fill projects, we wanted to include some other projects in this program. Partly, it's just taking advantage of the funding, but it's also to increase our opportunity to get a higher score from OPWC when we submit the application. And I will back up and mention that Mike Miller works for CT Consultants. He worked as the director of OPWC for about 17 years. He's really helped us be very successful with these OPWC submittals. In fact, he scores them for us and tells us whether he thinks it would have been funded or not. He said his impression on this application, just like last year's, it'll have very good scoring, high potential of being successful. Although he does also foresee a little bit higher rate of competition this year, so that might be a concern. So the traffic calming is included in the program. It's not a really expensive thing. It's about $17,000, I believe, was the cost on that. And this is not a final exhibit, but it was enough to put into the application because we still need to talk about where some of these parking spaces do and don't go related to the intersections and such. And I did extend it a little farther than initially talked about too. We can finalize this after we get the application complete. Okay, next. Oh, that slide was supposed to go in front of the other one. So the other safety improvement that we'd like to include in the application is the General Rosecrans Elementary School crosswalk. This one is a little more expensive. It's around a little over $50,000, primarily because of those RFBs, rectangular rapid flashing beacons that are associated with the crosswalk there for safety. A little bit of signage, just a little bit more work than the traffic calming it is, even though it's a relatively small project. But this will be included as well, and then a good opportunity to truly put some good safety initiatives into our community and the benefit of the schools. Okay, next. And then we had some other issues that we decided to include in this program as well, taking advantage. Go ahead, Amber. The first one is a drainage issue on Greenbrier Road that along the left, our left of that road is a trench drain that doesn't really function. I think, and it was installed by a private landowner. There are some drainage concerns out there. We will need to engineer a solution to that, but we put an allowance for this work into the program so we can, by the time we get to the funding, we'll have a solution developed for it and can build it with the program next year. Next. Same thing with Morning in Granville. That catch basin there on the second slide is probably the best indication of what's going on there. There's really no opening left in that catch basin, and there's a lot of water that drains down that direction from let's see, that's Granville Street, and then it takes around the corner and goes down Morning Street, and it flows over a homeowner's yard. It's creating flooding problems on the road and in that lot, as well as helping to deteriorate the pavement at a quicker rate. So we didn't include a lot of paving with this, but it may be in the following year's program. Of course, we do whatever we'll tear up, we'll replace, but this will give us an opportunity to see how it works. We'll need to raise the curb, probably put a larger catch basin in with maybe a double window so that we can capture that water. The other issue that it creates is in the winter, there's a lot of ice issues, ice from the water that doesn't flow away, sitting and freezing. Next. And then I don't really need to say a lot about that. It's obviously pretty bad. Even though we're not doing the entirety of Middleview, this structure really needs to be replaced. It's basically falling apart and doesn't function, and the pavement in the vicinity of it is really bad shape. So we'll take that out, again, put a double structure, replace the curb leading up to it, put a double inlet structure in its place, and take a curb probably 10 feet around that corner so that it maintains structural stability, patch that little bit of pavement, and call it a day. But that's been like that for quite a while, and it really needs to be fixed. So that's included in the program as well. Okay. So the total cost of all that, $1.018 million. That includes a 10% contingency, which is what OPWC likes to see in there. But that's the number. Next. So I did want to mention that we do have community support, and these community support letters are included in the application. Police and fire are relatively obvious, but that letter on the left is from the principal at GRE, and that it talks about how that crosswalk will be a huge advantage, safety advantage to the school and the children. Okay. So the cost estimate for all of that work was $925,700. Add the 10% contingency in total, that's where the $1.018 million comes from. As I mentioned, we have Mr. Miller reviews these applications for us, and he recommended these fundings exactly what we did last year: $300,000 in grant and $100,000 in a loan. We don't have to use the loan if you don't want to. It's a low interest rate. If you need to use it, but we don't have to use it. But you do want to apply for it because it gets you an extra 10 points on the application. So that's why we put it in there, and it definitely helps us with our scoring. It's strategic. It's a strategic initiative to do that, and to keep the percentage of money that we're taking toward the $1 million is appropriate as well as the $618,270 of local funds that's included. Dana's pretty excited about that, I think. So that's the story, quick and dirty. Just wanted to go over all of that with you and let you know. Just the next slide, Amber. The application is due November 3rd by midnight. We will have it in before that, obviously. In fact, I think Mr. Alleman will have this done probably by noon tomorrow, assuming we get a authorizing legislation, which will be on council's agenda tonight, and a certification from our finance director that the community has the funds to support the project. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
thank you to everybody who worked on this over the course of the month. I know there was a lot that went into this and we've been through various iterations of it at the same time.
Well, likewise, thank you. It's really good working with a good working group like we've had on this, and it's very refreshing to work with this type of community.
Morning Street in East Granville, is that just gonna be simply drainage or are you gonna rework?
We will rework a portion of it. We'll have to rework the portion that we tear out to put the catch basin in, but we'll feather in around that intersection there. We won't go too far down Morning Street with this year's program. We'll put that in, monitor it, see how it reacts and how it works, and then pave it with the next year's program. The next year's program might also need to do some refinement to the way it drains.
Well, the reason too, I was asking, I think that's gonna be a main connection to J.R. Smith, if I'm correct, right from the square. So that's the reason I was asking if it was all gonna be.
And it would
be.
And
Yeah.
and it would be probably about the same time as when the park would go in, that it would be taken care of. I didn't mention it, but in addition, looking at the way that water runs down there, we'll replace that catch basin, but I'm also considering putting a perpendicular trench drain across the road to capture some of that water before it rushes down the street and gets into that individual's backyard and creates the issues it does. That would be a follow-up if it's needed.
Thank you.
Great job.
So I did want to bring up a point that Dan had made as we were talking about the street program that I think is relevant to bring up to this group for future planning purposes. Since I've been in services committee, which is the time I've been on council, we've always directed our OPWC funding requests towards our street improvement plan. And Dan mentioned there may be some advantages in the future, depending on what other kinds of projects we have, of independently funding the streets program and running other projects towards OPWC. One of the major things that I took from it that would be a potential benefit is we get a hold of a contractor earlier. We'd be able to go to bid and get out at the beginning of the season, maybe get a better price on some of the road projects. I don't know if that's more of a savings than going for OPWC funding, but it's definitely something that we should look at every year to see if a different tact would be a better strategic option. So I appreciated that idea.
Absolutely, and that is an advantage, and you don't have to use OPWC for road work. We can use it for some sanitary improvements as well, aging infrastructure type of improvements. That would allow, the other advantages was we don't have to worry about so much interference with the school because we'll get the project done sooner, and we don't have that same problem with school, especially when, this year, for example, we're going on North Miller Drive. That's going to be interesting as that progresses when it's being paved. And one other thing I did want to mention is I was a big advocate for the pavement preservation in our last meeting, and I still am, and that's what the crack ceiling does. But in addition to that, I would recommend that we begin using Rejuvenator in the next. Typically, you put that in either in the year that the pavement is laid or the following year, so that it keeps that pavement, gives it a longer life. It brings the oils up, and like you had mentioned before, it's like a moisturizer for the pavement, and that it does. A lot of communities, I won't say most, but a lot of communities do that, and they're being very successful with it. It's relatively inexpensive. We could probably do all of the roads that we're doing this year for around. Could probably rejuvenate all of them for around $30,000 to $40,000.
Is that something that our streets department can do, or that's something we'd have to?
I don't think so. I think you'd have to hire it out to Pave Tech was the name of that company, or Strasser. It's not the same Strasser that we used for the street program this year. It's Strasser Pavement Preservation Company, but I don't think we can do it ourselves. I think they'd have to do it.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
When you say it can be done in the same year, like as soon as the pavement's finished, you can apply it. You don't have to wait any.
Yes, sir. Marysville does that. Some other communities do it. I think Columbus actually does it that way as well. But I I prefer to wait a year. Makes more sense. Because by then it's aged.
So like it's letting your deck wood.
Exactly.
Stated.
It's exactly
Yep.
what it's like, yeah.
I just call that laziness, but.
I just like analogies.
Okay, any other questions on the street program? That's gonna be on the council packet for tonight.
Yeah.
Next up is the bridge signage. This we also spent some time on over the last.
Yes, we did. So in your packet, beginning on packet page 20, I think we'll try to pull those up as well. Can you find them? Just so you can see them. So what we've got here are, I think there are 5 options in total. On the first page, and so maybe just to back up. So this is signage on the bridge that would cover over the new interchange, the Sunbury Parkway interchange. Sorry about that. No, it's probably on the F drive. Yeah, you're right. Sorry about that. And this, the notion of providing some signage on the bridge has been talked about for some period of time. So we do need to determine, what the recommendation would be. We need to get that over to the Ohio Department of Transportation, and it becomes part of their bid package for the bridge itself. Or as part of the interchange itself. So it's in front of us now, and actually we are running up against a little bit of a deadline in terms of trying to get something to ODOT to include in that bid packet. So on page 20, I've included just to show you something else. All of the others treat the letters slightly differently. I just wanted to make sure you saw this option though as well. What you see here on page 20 has the Sunbury lettering centered over the bridge. All of the other options show the Sunbury lettering centered over the drive lanes. And that's, I think, where the consensus of a working group has come. So I'm not suggesting that this would be an alternative to centering it over the drive lanes. But like I said, when you start to look at the way the letters are treated in these additional documents, I just want to make sure that you see this as an option as well. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind. These letters are shorter as well. One of the things we had asked CT consultants to do is expand the letters, and you'll see that on the subsequent pages. So if you flip then to page 21, you'll begin to see, I think, where the committee, the working group is kind of landed, and showing a couple of different variations on this. So what you see here is the lettering centered over the drive lanes. What you do see are larger font. So we've extended it to basically reach the cross railings on the fence itself. And then we show a couple of options in terms of how to look at the way the logo is presented. The one on the left has a black background. There's also showing it on the column proposed on the right-hand side. We'll talk a little bit about the columns at the end. This one, so if you look down at the bottom, concept 1, this font is a Georgia font, and the lettering is proposed to be black. And again, it scatters the letters out intermittently. The next option changes the font to a new Roman font. Again, similar size letters. Gray lettering though begins to change the color of the font a little bit. And then this one is an example where it reversed the logo itself. So it's got a white background instead of a black background. It's still a little hard to kind of see the contrast in the gray versus the black, but again, give you just some sort of general sense of that. Concept 3 on packet page 23. Again, this has got the letters close together, a new Roman font, a gray coloring here, a gray letter color here. And on the last one, again, the letters are spaced out a little bit more. So anyway, just kind of trying to show you some variations on that. Like I said, we'll talk about the column in just a little bit, but I think we're just trying to get some reaction then from this committee on what you like, what you don't like. Any thoughts you got, anything else you might want us to look at? Yeah. I'll stop there.
Just so I'm clear, when we're looking at these newer designs, because the designs I saw before didn't have boxes around the
Yep.
letters. There's not boxes around the letters, correct?
So Dan and I were talking a little bit about this. If you look at the Gemini and Polaris fencing, you actually do note that the fencing behind the letters is slightly different than the fencing where there are no letters. And I think what's trying to be shown here is maybe something like that, where either you could have a different type of fence. It's actually chain link. I personally don't think that's attractive. Or you could have some kind of a panel behind each letter so that it helps the letter stick out a little bit more, maybe a little bit more visible. We can kind of sort through that a little bit more. But
So that would be behind the railing. That,
it would be behind the letter. It would actually be
Oh.
in front of the fence itself.
okay.
I mean, if it were a panel on the back of it behind each letter.
Okay.
Got it.
Are the letters that on our examples that are close together, S2 and S3, is that what's closest to this Worthington page that we're looking at?
Yeah, so that, I was gonna say,
As far as like the letter spacing?
Yes, as far as the spacing goes, right? It's hard to compare to the Williams one because it's got the curvature and the fence
Okay.
around it and all.
yeah, the Worthington sign I had here, just to begin to see kind of the pillars on the end and how that's treated. Because like I said, in the options here, S1, for example, it does show a pillar. It does show the city's logo on it. You know, that's, I think, some of what Worthington has done or will do with theirs. So,
The plaques on, we didn't put those plaques on until about 3 years after the project was done. We just left a little indent into the columns, but those are as you're driving north or south on 23, you see it from that. On Rich's, on this one exhibit, he shows that facing the highway. We actually showed it where when you're driving over the bridge or toward the bridge, you'd see that plaque. So that's the difference.
I was starting, I like number 4. The only thing I don't know is which, I mean, based on the rendering, I mean, it's not a real high quality image. I think I get that the white space in the back is just gonna be something maybe to be determined. It's not like a big white sheet of steel or something.
That's correct.
I mean, that's what it looks like on here, and that scares me. We're gonna just figure out, like, there's gonna be something where contrast will be provided, and that may be a different fence type, material, something.
right.
That will allow it to clearly be seen.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
That's a great way to say that. Yes.
Well, it might be, what is important to know that, we have to present this, that ODOT has an aesthetics committee that has to approve it. I doubt that there'll be any issues except potentially changing the fence type might be
Mhm.
something that they're not willing to do. So whatever we come up with may not be the final design based on their thoughts.
As long as the letters don't get lost in the fence.
Right.
And, we don't have big white sheets of steel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be ugly. Did you put the Finlay? We don't have the Finlay.
No, I do not have, well, is that Finley? No, that's Huber Heights or,
Yeah, that's super. Finley has the, I don't know what color, so it's gray or sort of a gunmetal
yeah.
color, which you can see better on
Is
that.
that on 75? Interstate
Yeah, right.
It is on
Yeah.
75. Yep, yep.
You're street mapping it, aren't you? Keep doing it.
Yep.
They've got two, one says Flag City, USA, and another says Finley.
Yeah.
City of Finley.
I definitely lean towards 3. I mean, same thing as 4, just scrunched up. I think you're less likely to lose the lettering if it's closer together, but that's really the only preference between those two. I like those two more than the other ones myself.
I like them closer together, but it's hard to tell what it would look like on something huge over a
Right.
over a road. So it's hard. That might spread out might look just fine with perspective.
Is there,
It's hard
an-
to tell.
is there an example of one that's staggered like that? Cause I couldn't think of one off the top of my head. Gemini, Easton, they're all together, right?
I don't know. That's a good question.
What do you say? Is there one where it's close together?
Where the letters are spaced out. I
Um,
couldn't think of one.
Gemini
That
and
doesn't mean anything.
Polaris are the only ones that I saw that were spaced out.
Are they spaced? Okay,
They're, yeah,
I need to look at them again.
it's like this.
I'll see it.
Oh, that's.
That does not
spaced out.
Now, look, like when you guys are talking about scrunching up, it would be like that.
Okay, we'll see.
Well,
That
okay,
is-
I guess the drawing might be a little,
It's hard to.
there's not a whole letters
This
worth.
is half the road, man.
Yeah,
So. Like this,
if this ends up looking like that,
I'll
I
look
like
at
that.
Yeah.
Here, do you mind if, here, Mary, look
I
at this?
just,
so this is like that. Except for it's probably a little bit, our logo would be here.
yeah, okay.
No, this one is like that. In terms of real estate. And how wide it is covering, so these are the drive lanes. And then it would go from basically there to there, it's the logo there.
So it's not gonna be like an S, a space. Or how,
Well, yeah, I mean, there may be a space in there.
I think the chief aesthetic here that we're wanting to make sure isn't the case is that when you have your S, U, N, that there's a full space for another S after the S and another U after the U. Cause that's what it looks like in the drawing and that looks to,
Maybe just something in between,
Okay.
four.
Okay, in terms of spacing, all right, so a
Yeah.
little closer spacing, okay.
yeah, I don't want to go stretched up.
Between.
And then with the graphic, did we lean towards white on black, black on white, gray on white, white on gray, gold on rainbow, whatever?
Yeah, I think, in the course of the conversations we've had with most people, I think people have tended toward kind of the whitish background on the logo. So that the cupola stands out a little bit more, with the black or gray or whatever, so. And both options 3 and 4 obviously have that, so and that's appealing to the eye, for most here.
I feel like that'd pop and look real good, on white.
All right, well, both of those options are Times New Roman font. There's not a big difference, obviously, between the fonts, so,
But it doesn't look super spaced out either.
yeah.
I like that too, because each panel of the fence
Yeah.
is spaced
It
for,
matches up with the letter.
yeah,
We're looking at Flag City, USA and Finley.
Mhm.
yeah, I like that.
Okay,
They made that logo, I mean, really stand.
I like that.
Yeah,
That's all. Is that gunmetal or is that black? Oh, it does look gray, doesn't it? Yeah. That's cool. Let's get some American flags too. That's like that.
Finley's like the flag capital, so.
Yeah.
They kind of have
See all
to.
those-
Just put more of them up.
all right, so
What do you,
unless there are additional thoughts, Murray, Cindy, beyond what we,
No, I like what we're looking at here, that Flag City USA.
yeah.
They're spread out enough to be able to define the letters, but they're not so spread out that you have to put the letters together to read it.
Doesn't that flag sit
Yeah.
Yeah.
right over the middle of the road?
Yeah. it is.
that looks nice too. I think I like the approach of just having Sunbury rather than welcome to, but yeah, looks nice.
Yeah, I agree. I think just some very,
So good.
I think also
Yeah.
the road characteristic is gonna be different, like this is big. I mean, long
Yeah.
term, this is gonna end up having multiple lanes.
Mhm.
Is this something you could put a couple options together, limit it down and then put a poll out?
We already did that.
Oh, did you?
We sent it to everybody.
Okay, good. I forgot I saw
the
that.
decision maker.
Who's glad I saw that?
Just run it recommendation.
VIPs.
All right, I think we've got enough guidance then in terms of how to modify 3 and 4. So I think the other thing we just want to talk a little bit about, I think were the pillars or the piers or whatever. So that's that last document that you see in there. So Dan kind of helped walk through this a little bit. I don't know if we should start on page 3 and work our way back to the front. Still trying to, I think, understand kind of the bridge orientation and where where signage, would be visible.
I'm, like you said, it's hard to tell exactly, and they're not
Yeah.
completed with their design, so we don't even know for sure, but you see on this, if you take the page back one, you can see the emblem, at Huber Heights. They put that on the concrete as it goes up the slope. I don't think we're gonna have that type of grade, so that's kind of out. And these columns are set off of on that last page, the columns are set off of the bridge, because I don't believe they're planning on putting columns at the end of the fences, so we set them there. And so they're just slightly off the edge of the pavements, and that you would either inset, as I was mentioning earlier, well, I guess you can do both, inset in the traffic flow direction on the bridge, or traffic flow direction on 71, or both. So those column insets, no, the question is cost on that. I don't know, which we don't, once we get it approved, we decide exactly what we're gonna do with the price, and then we can make the next decision on whether or not. Or we can still include it in a plan set and let the contractor give us a real price.
Right, we can make it an alternate.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe another thing to just kind of sort of consider when you look at the Worthington columns that are on the end. I mean, they're extended well beyond kind of the bridge itself.
Right.
So I think in our sketches, it's a little hard to tell. I don't know that we're not really sure, I guess, whether it could fit kind of at the end or whether you got to extend it beyond the bridge a little bit, the way the Worthington bridge is designed. So I think we still have to understand a little bit from the engineering perspective where we could put a column. Maybe the question really is, are we pro column?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we are. Just want to confirm we are pro column.
Yeah, where else would we put branding? Or on what else?
Well, I think you might have been.
We do have some monument signs at the when you come off the ramps, we've got monument signs. I don't need to include those.
No, I did not.
It's a separate issue, but monument signs like Westerville has, kind of what highway you coming off of, or
270.
onto.
270.
Okay,
Mhm.
so they have a brick sign with Westerville written across it. That type of thing we're looking at on each one of the on the.
I know Berkshire Township is definitely doing columns, and I know they're definitely adding branding. One of them.
Mhm. Yep.
Incorporated in their design.
So, okay.
I don't think we need to know exactly where the columns are, but we do want columns. And the question is, how would you like them branded? Use
Those things.
The city of Sunbury.
Yeah.
No, that was Joe Thomas had put together like 8 potential
Yes.
options. I'm not saying that's the exact rendering, but first of all, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Put together.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, my gosh, like artificial intelligence or Joey's hand is like amazing. I don't know how he does that.
But I think the reason we didn't show that is because we're not sure the bridge would support that. And the bridge design will support that. So
Sure.
that's the question I think that we've still got to figure out from an engineering perspective. So,
I mean, this is what I would say. Worthington column, most recent big bridge project, looks nice. I mean, it's kind of a timeless column on the end. And then Berkshire Township is modeling their columns after Worthington. All I'm saying on record, we can do something similar. It just has to be way better than Berkshire Township. So that's.
well, let's just put, that's what it says on the emblem, way better than.
Right.
Sunbury, way better than Berkshire.
Much more timeless. I mean,
Much more timeless than
clock tower or something on all 4 corners.
We can take that direction and put together the concepts to give to ODOT and finalize design as we get into the.
Perfect. Just put in as placeholders, here's the real estate we're thinking and we want to do columns.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right. Is there anything else we need to review regards to the bridge signage?
No.
All right. Let's go ahead with our other updates. We've got the ongoing renovations.
Yeah, I mean, not much to report here that you haven't already heard. We are meeting weekly with the architect, the progress team. Demolition is to begin this week, although we are in the middle of the week. They're not here yet. They are starting to mark the walls for demolition, do that kind of stuff. So they've been in, doing that kind of prep work. So, yeah, we have engaged the city's owner's rep in the project. You had approved an agreement for DLZ to help us do that. So, I am communicating with that individual and so, yeah, I think we're just continuing to make progress. Like I said, probably nothing you haven't already heard at this point.
Reservoir Park then?
So, yeah.
Well, I guess the main point I want to make is that I was asked to contact ODNR Reservoir Safety Program folks and make sure we can use those continue to use those reservoirs and more importantly, continue to use the pipes that penetrate the embankments of the reservoir. I can't say they were crazy about the idea, but they did give us a positive answer that they would allow that so long as we make sure that we put in that emergency overflow drawdown component of the project, which we certainly are. And what we don't know, we know that we can use those. They've given us that permission. What we don't know is what shape they're in. We may need to either find a way to rehabilitate those because they're very old. I think we decided they're, at least 50, probably older than that. So they may be somewhat deteriorating, but we may be able to line them and continue to use them or put a new penetration carefully into the embankment. The other option, if we don't do either one of those, is to actually pump up and over with a pipe, which sounds ugly, but we can make it look decent anyway. Sort of like a siphon type of approach. But bottom line is ODNR will allow us to use those reservoirs and use the infrastructure that's in place or new infrastructure to accommodate taking water out of there and using it for our other uses.
Okay.
Right, and satisfying then the safety issues that,
Right.
They've been talking to us about for some time now. So,
Correct.
All right. And the last bullet's wastewater treatment plant.
yeah, and on this, the chairman and I talked a little bit about this yesterday. I just want to give you a heads up that I think we're going to try to make the bulk of our next meeting a briefing on where we stand with the wastewater treatment plant design and just so we get a sense of what is happening there. And also talking to Dan and Wes a little bit more about just giving the committee a sense of kind of what happens next with respect to Little Walnut Creek Interceptor. And we'll be talking a little bit about an annexation, a couple of annexations later. So I feel like we probably ought to at least give you a high level sense of how we could, begin to service that side. So begin to kind of frame those issues for you in more detail next meeting. So it's been a while, I think, since we've talked about wastewater treatment to this group, and we, clearly,
It's such a thrilling topic.
well,
So,
we're investing a lot of time, money, and effort into it, and we definitely need to get back in front of the committee. So that's all.
right. And I appreciate how tonight we got to talk about something pretty with the bridge designs, whereas not normally something that services committee gets to decide on. And then next month we're talking about sewers. So very appropriate. Do we have any other topics for good of the order that we need to discuss?
Door looks nice.
No, it does look nice.
Really nice.
And yeah.
Hey, thank you.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Cooper, second by Mr. Neff. Have a roll call?
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper? Yes. Mayor St. John?
Yes.
Mr. Capel?
Yes.